So this is week 8 of Creating a Life with God, and today we are moving into a couple of practices that are more physical. So we have body prayer today and walking, specifically also talking about labyrinths next week. So we're moving out of some of the ones that we've done that are more mental into some physical prayers. I'm curious though, as we get started, what prayer practice have you found because of this class that has been meaningful for you? Anybody feel like sharing?
For me, it's been the Jesus prayer. I've not used it before as much as I'm using it now. And it's like in difficult situations or someone whose moods are a little cranky or, something like that, And I've been just started PT, and some of the exercises are very strenuous. So Jesus prayer just kind of stays right with me there. Yeah.
Good. Thank you for sharing that, Anne.
Mm-hmm.
Glad that's been meaningful for you. Anyone else?
Well, I've used that one also. And I'm also thinking more. I don't know if I've done that much more journaling, but I've got some ideas anyway, and I say, well, I need to write that down, and just if I will do it. Yeah. So,
Okay.
and I do have something sort of started there.
Good. Thanks for sharing that, Merle.
Okay.
I too have noticed using the Jesus prayer a lot, just to help me come back to my breath, because for me, I can stay in control of my reactions as long as I'm in control of my breathing. And it's really funny. I even had the thought that I wanted to write down and start journaling. And it just seems like in this season of my life, I have to say, I'm sorry, I don't have time right now for that. And because it just seems like I'm going 100 different directions. So I'll be glad when, I think I'll be glad when this month is over. I hope it's just this month that is so hectic, and then I can get into a routine of allowing myself to have that time to journal.
Good. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Marisa.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a very busy week for me also, so I didn't really do as much as I have tried in the past, but the Delecto, whatever it's called, Divina, is still what resonates with me, because it's just doing it a different way of, reading the Bible and really meditating on it. So I find it pretty meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Lectio Divina, sacred reading. Yes, but it's a word that words that nobody's used to saying and stuff. And I do it. I'm glad to hear that, because that is a really cool way to focus in and sort of have a conversation back and forth between you and God about that scripture and what's God drawing your attention towards, and why is that? And that's a really helpful practice. I'm glad.
Can I do a shameless plug? That's how Pastor John always responded to me. But that's exactly what I do with my meditation session that I do. I have certain Bible verses that I read, and then I read again before you go into your silent time. So if that's something that appeals to you, reach out to me and I'll put you on the mailing list for the prayer sessions.
That's Mondays
When,
at
when
3,
do you
right?
do that?
Mondays at 3. Yes, ma'am?
It's on Zoom, right?
Yes,
Okay.
it is on Zoom.
Okay.
So it's Mondays at 3.
And then
I'll-
that's also what Pastor CJ uses on Tuesday and Thursday mornings at 9 o'clock for morning devotions. He uses Lectio Divina,
Okay.
and does that. He started that in the shutdown last year, right? He started doing it twice a week, and so there's still people that are logging in every week to walk through different scriptures and stuff together. So yeah, those are other great opportunities available to anyone in the congregation who would like some more practice in some of those particular areas. Last night, I said I had set up to do this class in person on Wednesday night. No one came.
Oh,
And so I had brought my mandala coloring book and some other stuff, my big wooden labyrinth and things. And so I sat, my whole family was here. and I needed to help Daryl reset a room afterwards. And so I sat and had quiet time and colored in most of a mandala. Sat and prayed with my prayer beads, and it was nice, so it was a way of redeeming that space and time for myself, instead of just sitting there going, oh, nobody wanted to do class. Okay, well, I'm here, I've got all the stuff, I'm gonna do something. So it was interesting. Today with body prayer, my book is at home and I'm here at the office. So I'm going to depend on you all. What stood out for you in this particular chapter as you were reading through about awareness of your body when you are praying? Marisa.
I'll start it. Well, when I was reading it and it was getting into the touchier topics, I was thinking, okay, how do I use my body? But I do it all the time. Anytime I'm listening to praise music, I'm going to be bouncing around. I'm going to be dancing. My hands are going to be up. I'll be crying sometimes. But then in the yoga too, and being very intent on what I'm doing with my body, and always thanking God and praising God that I can still get my body to move.
Yeah. Thank you.
I thought it was kind of an eye-opener for me, because at my age and my generation, when I was young and growing into teens and so forth, you didn't talk about your body and your body responses. They didn't preach on the Song of Solomon, that one of those hidden things that you don't read because you're not supposed to know about that when you're a teen and so forth.
Right.
So it was refreshing to me to, have this as an open discussion in his
Right.
book, and sometimes nowadays you look at some of the teens and you think, oh boy, I wish they weren't so much aware of their bodies and movement, and some of it's a little provocative when you look at them, but
Yeah.
but I like this chapter very much, particularly when he got in towards the end of it in the breathing portion. I like that. Mhm.
Yeah, you bring up a good point with the chapter. It's the Song of Solomon, and then there's the couple. It's Abelard and
Mhm.
Eloise.
Eloise. Okay.
Eloise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so here's two examples of different ways of how body was approached, and we do have, some of us have been raised with a lot of shame about bodies, a lot of shame about sexuality, which is a part of our body. And we struggle with that, even if it's not conscious. We just struggle with feeling free in our body to express, or thinking about our body as a temple, right? And whether or not it meets the sort of society approved definitions, right, of what body should look like, because we get all these body images all around us all of the time, and when we don't measure up to these ideals that are created, lifted up, whatever, we can have a lot of shame about that. I was the kid that was klutzy, like all, kind of arms and legs as a little kid. And I heard, like, so I'm in preschool ballet, right? And they're talking about the recital. We've been practicing for the recital. All the parents are getting a little piece of paper about all the costumes that you have to buy and everything. And my mom didn't get a paper. And when she went to ask about it, they said, yeah, we're just thinking that she doesn't really need to be in the recital because she doesn't like really, she's not very coordinated and stuff. And so so I didn't do it. And they didn't want me up there. And for years, I internalized that as I'm uncoordinated, I'm klutzy, I will never be good at sports. I never tried out for sports, right? I was always self-conscious when we did them at youth group. I never tried out for sports at school. I didn't start running until I was in my 30s. And I loved it, and I'm not fast, but I learned how to be comfortable in my own body and to be strong, whether or not it fits some kind of model. Like, I enjoy being able to bike ride and do all of these things. I've become very comfortable in my body in the last 10, 15 years. But for years, there was just so much shame around it. And you can't really be fully present with yourself if you can't, and with God, when you can't really be fully present in your body. And so there's a lot of that in there in this chapter. What else stood out for you?
Oh, well, what you just said was very appropriate, or very close to what I was remembering when I was teaching dance. I remember we had, well, when I first started teaching, I was pretty young, and I was always thinking about having really good students and how much satisfaction I would have teaching them, the ones who are really talented and everything. But of course, and everybody always liked the little tiny ones. They were always so cute. And I remember especially this one little girl who she was actually bigger than most of the students in the class, and probably a little bit older because she was new. And we did, just for the first class, we did sort of a combination. It wasn't all ballet, it wasn't all acrobatics. We did a little bit of both. And this girl was a little heavy set and a little klutz. Well, I found a lot of them. When we did a forward roll, they would arch their back instead of keep it tucked. And that would cause them to fall over and be really scared. And I was trying to get them out of that. But every day we would do the wheelbarrow, and I would hold their feet and let them walk on their hands, you know. And this one little girl, she was even scared to do the wheelbarrow. It was, she was just, it was a little frightening to her. And I told her, well, just go ahead, you know, and just do a couple of steps with your hands. So we did that. And then she eventually got to where she really wanted to do that. And she was so proud of herself. And she said, can we do that again? And she would go farther, and then she would do the forward roll out of it, because when they did the forward roll out of the wheelbarrow, they had to keep tucked. And because I was holding onto their feet until the last minute, and she was just getting more and more comfortable with her body. And that's what I was thinking, how, and that was so nice to see somebody who was, at first she was just afraid to do it. And it was frightening to her, but I was able to get her through that. And then she was able to really look forward to it. And so I thought that was just really taking a step in the right direction to make her feel more comfortable with her body. And I think that's important. I think you see athletes, and I think that's a good, people who are athletic, and I never thought of myself as athletic. I did dancing, but not sports, because I was scared of the ball, really. You know, if we were doing like volleyball, it hurt my hands, and baseball, I was scared to catch it, things like that. But as far as other things like a little bit of track, I was not too bad at that. And even I could do the shot put, because the teacher explained the right form, and by using the form, which I had gotten out of dancing, you know, I was this little skinny thing, but I think the teacher didn't even acknowledge that I had pushed, that I had put it so far, you know, rather than because I wasn't supposed to be I wasn't one of the big husky girls that could do that.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a matter of people getting comfortable with their bodies. And then I feel another thing that I've seen, though, is to be thinking that it's not all you, because I was also thinking about with like this situation this summer in the Olympics with Simone Biles, how she was pushing herself so hard, and then she just had to draw back. But I'm feeling like sometimes people start to think, well, it's all about them, and they lose their sense of what it is. I don't know what it, I'll tell you what it made me think of. It made me think of the Christ temptation. And one of his temptations was that he could fly.
Yeah.
And, you know, he said, maybe I could, but I'm not going to do it. You know, this is not for me to do.
Right.
And so, you know, you have to think that it's not you, and you're not doing it to demonstrate that you can do it. And sometimes the athletes, if they are too much if people are if they become too much of a hero in a way that they forget about the prayer part of it. So it's got a delicate balance. Those are just some of the things that I've been thinking, but I think it's very important for people to get comfortable in their bodies and the way they use them, and to find the right balance. That's
Absolutely.
all.
Thank you, Meryl.
Okay.
Thank you. Pam, did you have anything from the chapter that you wanted to lift up?
Well, I underlined something in the beginning on page 115 that really applies not only to this chapter, but to a lot of other things. When we approach familiar activities, we tend to do them as we have always done them. We certainly don't bring to them an attitude of contemplative prayer and reflection. And I just thought that really applies to not only this chapter, but other chapters as well. And I just thought I needed to be reminded of that. And so I underlined it.
Good.
But I found I guess I didn't get quite as much out of this chapter as a lot of other people. It just didn't really, doing the exercises where you would portray a feeling or a word.
Right.
I just didn't think that would be something that, I mean, I agree with Marissa. When I hear praise music, you know, I'm sort of bouncing around too, and sometimes I'm crying. So in that respect, I agree, but maybe it was the way he explained it about acting out a word. It just didn't do much for me.
That didn't connect with you. Yeah. Yeah. So those are the two. I appreciate the quote that you underlined there, because it is all of this, all of these, silence, journaling, lectio, Jesus prayer, and others. All of it. You can't just do it cold, right? You have to do, or just like, oh, I know what this is and I'm gonna just do it.
Yeah.
You have to slow down and have an awareness of being really present and connected to God as you're doing it. So that's great to lift up. And then, yeah, he lifted up, as far as body prayer is concerned, he lifted up really two ways to kind of think about it today. And one of those was like, if you're doing sort of a lectio, a reading in a group, that you could, if the word that resonates with you, right, you would get up and you would somehow demonstrate it or act it out. And I can see where that might resonate with some people and be wholly uncomfortable for others. I don't know, in a group setting, right? At least with people that I don't know very well, maybe, or whatever, that I would feel comfortable just getting up and doing that kind of stuff. I'm always the person who feels self-conscious in fitness classes, right? Or even yoga, and I love yoga, but sometimes I get more cognizant of the other people around me, and am I doing this right, and what are they going to think, rather than, I know Marissa was going to say that, rather than being really present to what I'm doing and my breath, and that's all that matters. And then the other one is breathing, right? Anne lifted this up earlier when she was talking, that he talks a lot about your breath and breathing, as being a way of getting very in attune to your body. So, you know, making sure that you're sitting comfortably in a chair, you know, you kind of upright, not slouched down, right? And that you can take in some very slow and controlled breaths in and out, and notice how you do that, right? Do you just normally breathe very shallowly? Can you feel your whole diaphragm filling up with air when you take in a big breath? and then push all of that out as you're doing that. This is a big part of breathing in yoga, is this awareness of your body and your breath, and sort of filling up your whole chest cavity so that you can feel it all as you're taking in a breath all the way up. And then there's a noticeable difference when you're letting your breath out, right? Because you filled the space and now you're letting air out of the space. So I you can rest easy. We're not going to do the thing where I read scripture and everybody needs to try and act out a word on camera. You can relax on that one. But what I did think that we could do is take some time to turn off our cameras for a bit and just concentrate on breathing. And Marisa, I'm trying to remember, since I don't have the book in front of me, there wasn't a specific word or anything that we were supposed to kind of focus in on as
Not,
we were trying this out, right?
not that I remember.
Okay. I mean, obviously, I think that one of the things that you all have talked about that's been meaningful for you is the Jesus prayer. I mean, if you need a word to focus your mind in that, I think that's probably a great one to do the Jesus prayer as you're breathing in and breathing out, right? But this is just time for you to kind of breathe and be conscious of God as you're doing it, but just be attuned to what do you feel and what is happening in your body as you are really paying attention to breathing. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. How much time would you like for this? 5, 7, or 10 minutes?
5 is good.
5 is good?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's just take a moment. Gracious God, we ask for your presence to be among us. Go ahead and you can turn off your camera and just breathe. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So I muted everyone while we were off the camera, so you may have to unmute yourselves. Who would like to share about how this experience was for them? What did you notice in your body as you were breathing?
Just relaxed, just much more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially when you're working at your laptop or bend over or whatever. And it's a good thing to do, to remember to
Mm-hmm.
just relax your shoulders, your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A few minutes of deep breathing and an awareness of God, even if we're not actively praying, you know, in the way that we think of praying, can be incredibly relaxing, restorative, and help a great deal. What else did you notice in your body?
I noticed that my neck was stiff, and so I started stretching my neck.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you stop for a moment, you can pay attention to those signals that your body's sending you that sometimes we just ignore. They become like background noise. Mm-hmm. I noticed that when I started, my legs were crossed and I couldn't get as deep of a breath as what I was wanting. But when I put both my feet flat on the floor, it made me straighten up, and it was much easier to really fill up my whole chest cavity. And my mind got quiet. It races a lot with things, and my mind, it was just very much concentrating on in deep and out deep, and so there wasn't room for a lot of space of other things to go flitting around. What else? Anybody feel like sharing?
I wanted to tell you, while I was breathing, I recalled something that I did about 10 years ago. I went to 2 sessions with a woman who taught us breathing exercises. I never realized there were so many different ways to breathe. And she would do things like inhale through your mouth, out through your nose, holding it. There were things called the train whistle. I had forgotten all about that. And the whole purpose was to improve your respiratory system, to get it stronger. And so God brought that back to my mind while I was breathing. And as you age, you become so much more aware that your lungs are so important to you in breathing. And that was good. That came in my mind. And I'm going to do a little more research and try to remember some of those exercises.
That's wonderful. I love that. Yes. And you made that connection in your mind.
I did,
like
while I
being
was
still
just
and
sitting
quiet.
here very quiet. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just popped in.
Something you hadn't thought about in years. That's wonderful. That's a God thing. Anybody else?
Breath is so much a part of what I do that it's nice to know that I'm not in charge of this group and I can actually practice that, because even when I'm in the class, I can do the breathing somewhat, but when I'm having to instruct, it's very hard to breathe and tell them how I want them to be doing things, especially alternate nostril type breathing. That's one for you, and that really calms you down. So we live in a life that just shoves so much on us that we get out of breath, and that turns on our fight or flight response for our body. And that's not a good place to be all the time. But when you're doing this deep breathing, you're turning on the parasympathetic, which overcomes that fight or flight. And that's why your shoulders are able to come down and you are able to get so relaxed. And that's why breath, you always, in a yoga class, the teachers always come back to the breath, come back to the breath. And I thought, yeah, but it's what I say.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining in better detail about the body connection and what's happening in our bodies. My spiritual director a couple of years ago had encouraged me that if I ever felt myself becoming stressed or panicked, right, and thinking about all of the things that I needed to do for the day, to take a few minutes to sit in the chair and just concentrate on my breathing. She didn't explain about fight or flight or all of that, but I've felt the benefits of that, right? And sometimes counterintuitive when you've got a long list of things you just want to plow through and keep going, right? Because you feel like that's the only way. But if you're doing it frantically sometimes, or in a way where your stress is heightened, you're not as effective at doing any of it, right? And when you can take time to just sit and breathe, even for a few moments, it flips that. You can feel that switch flip inside your body, where you're better able to think, you're better able to concentrate, and you can kind of move forward in a different way with that. And taking that, and then the awareness that we were talking about, that Pam mentioned again, about all of these things that we do, it's about being contemplative and having an awareness of God and the presence of God as we do them. And it's prayer, and it's beautiful. And it may not look like a prayer that anybody ever taught you to pray when you were a kid, right? But it can be just as meaningful and just as helpful. So thank you for your willingness to explore a little more today in terms of breathing and body prayer. Next week is the labyrinth. I'm going to send you all a video that Joey and I made this last year about walking the labyrinth at camp. You'll get that. You'll get a link to that. It's on our YouTube page. You'll get a link to that that you can watch it. It's, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes long. It's not long at all. And we're going to chat here in just a second about meeting up together to actually walk the labyrinth.